All right. Well, today we talk about whether exercising at night is better for heart health. And research has shown that constant and consistent daily activity and exercise is good for our hearts and overall health. And when we exercise, well, it has been shown, and we know because we feel it. Those of us that that get into our exercising, we know that when we exercise, we feel better, and it just has an overall impact on our well-being. And so we're gonna discuss this article today, and I'm gonna pull it up. It's exercising at night offers biggest boost in heart health. It was written by Everyday Health, and how we're going to read this and discuss it, and I'm going to take a few sections of it because this is a big article, and then yeah, that's how we're going to do it back and forth with Dr. D. Okay, so I'll start. Exercising in the evening may offer the biggest boost in heart health. Physical activity later in the day may do the most to moderate blood sugar levels in people with obesity, protecting the heart. And this was written by Everyday Health. Now, there are key takeaways to this article for people with obesity. Getting the majority of physical activity in the evening reduce the risk of heart disease and death more than exercising in the morning or afternoon. Another takeaway, exercise at any time of day still reduce these risks more than getting no physical activity at all. And exercising at night may help regulate blood sugar levels because insulin sensitivity is lower at night. And so the article starts out saying during the majority of moderate to vigorous physical activity in the evening was linked to better health outcomes for people with obesity compared with exercising at other times of the day, according to an Australian study published on April the 10th in Diabetes Care. Aerobic physical activity, that's bouts lasting 3 minutes or longer, that was performed mostly in the evening from 6 p.m. to midnight, was associated with the greatest reduction in death and heart disease, says co-author Angelo Sabag, who has a PhD and a lecturer in exercise physiology at the Sydney School of Health Sciences in Australia. And this is what Dr. Sabag says. But the key message from my study is that physical activity at any time is associated with a reduced risk of cardiovascular disease and mortality in adults with obesity, he says. Overall, these findings highlight the importance of physical activity for heart health and mortality. More.
Morning, afternoon, and evening exercises were followed for 8 years. To explore the link between the timing of exercise and heart disease and death from any cause, researchers included 30,000 adults with obesity who were age 40 and older from the UK Biobank data. The average participant age was 62, and about 10% of the subjects, 2,995, were also diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. People were excluded from the trial if they had pre-existing heart disease, cancer, or both. The amount and timing of physical activity of participants was measured by an accelerometer worn 24 hours a day for a week when the study began. All activity was tracked, including any movement during their workday or while doing household chores, as well as structured exercise like running and walking. Participants were then placed into one of three categories based on when they did the majority of their moderate to vigorous physical activity: morning, afternoon, or evening. Examples of moderate activity include brisk walking, dancing, gardening, vigorous intensity activities like jogging, running, fast cycling, fast swimming, and walking briskly up a hill. Researchers linked that information to health data from the National Health Services and National Records of Scotland to follow participants' health trajectory for 7.9 years. During the follow-up, there were 1,425 deaths, 39 3,980 cardiovascular events and 2,162 microvascular dysfunction events like decreased nerve, kidney, or eye function, neuropathy, nephropathy, and retinopathy. To try to zero in on the impact of physical activity timing, researchers controlled for numerous factors including demographics, smoking, alcohol consumption, diet, and sleep.
All right. People who exercised in the evening had a lower risk of death. When participants were compared with a control group who had no bouts of moderate to vigorous physical activities, researchers found people who did the majority of their aerobic physical activity between 6 p.m. and midnight had the lowest risk of premature death and death from heart disease. More activity in the evening was associated with a 61% lower risk of dying from any cause, afternoon activity associated with a 40% lower risk, and morning activity associated with a 33% lower risk. More activity in the evening was associated with a 36% lower risk of dying from heart disease. Afternoon activity was associated with a 16% lower risk, and morning activity associated with a 17% lower risk. Evening exercise was also linked with a lower risk of neuropathy, nephropathy, and retinopathy. Ooh, all my words I had to try to pronounce. The risk were decreased 24% for evening activity, 16% for afternoon, and 21% for morning. The frequency of the evening physical activity also appeared to be more important than their total amount of daily physical activity, which I thought was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
While more research is needed to show that the timing of activity caused the decreased risk, this study suggests that the timing of physical activity could be an important part of the recommendations for future obesity and type 2 diabetes management and preventive healthcare in general, says Sebag. What did I say? Sebag?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there you go.
Exercising later in the day may compensate for decreased insulin sensitivity. These findings make sense given previous research that shown that there is a circadian rhythm to insulin sensitivity, says Matthew Campert, a physician in sports medicine and endocrinology and director of exercise medicine at the Endocrine and Metabolism Institute at the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio. Some believe that this decreased insulin sensitivity during evening was developed to protect against hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, throughout the night when people would typically not consume food, said Dr. Campert, who was not involved in the study. For people who cannot produce more insulin to compensate, like many of the people living with obesity, undertaking physical activity later in the day may be offsetting some of the evening related insulin resistance. There are two main ways that exercise lowers blood sugar. Number one, physical activity increases insulin sensitivity, so your muscle cells are more able to use any available insulin to take up glucose, sugar, during and after activity. When your muscles contract, your cells are able to take up glucose and use it for energy, even if insulin isn't available. While this interpretation provides some insight into potential mechanisms, further research is required to gain a more comprehensive understanding of such processes, says Sebag.
Could some of the benefits be caused by what people weren't doing at night? That's what I thought about too. There is
Mm-hmm.
evidence that late night eating and snacking tends to
Mm-hmm.
include more highly processed foods. Could some of the risk reduction be because of what the evening exercisers weren't eating?
Mm-hmm.
Although the study controlled for many factors, it is much harder to control for dietary factors, says Sabag. Researchers had to rely on self reported food recall and diaries for the participants' diet. Nevertheless, we control for fruit and vegetable consumption and diet quality index, and the results remain consistent, he says.